So in terms of ride phases and plans, so it takes, as you can see here from the slide, it takes a long time, or it could take a very long time to build a ride from the idea all the way through the actual opening of the ride. So you go into these different stages. So the project program is where the initiation or the initial development of the ride begins. This is where you start having concept designs in terms of like trying to figure out how the ride's going to look. Then you have the design process where you have all the schematic designs, but also more design developments. And this is when you start bringing in the construction documents, like the blueprints, to see how it's really gonna look once you start, adding, the wood and the metal and all the other elements to the actual ride. And then you have the implementation process. This is where the construction actually begins. No more blueprints. This is the tangible ride is now starting to get built during the implementation process. So this is also where you start testing the ride, the beta testing, to make sure that there's no issues with the ride, because certainly you don't want people to get hurt, injured, or killed on the ride. So the implementation process is quite important. Then of course you have the opening, and you have the pre-opening. Oftentimes is referred to as the soft opening. This is where you let some people on, maybe some employees, try it out, see what it's like. And then of course you have the grand opening. So I gave you the example of Jurassic Park, the ride over at Universal Studios, as an example. In this particular case, it took 6 years and over $110 million to build. Nowadays, the cost of building a ride is enormous. So if you think about Galaxy's Edge, for instance, over at Disneyland, cost $1 billion. So just incredible. But once the ride is built, then you have to think about, okay, how are you going to promote this new attraction or new ride? So you have to think about the 4 Ps. So obviously when we talk about the product, you want to highlight the features in terms of like what makes it cool, the price, how much are you going to charge? So for instance, if you're Disneyland or Universal Studios, are you going to sort of raise your ticket prices because you have this new attraction? Maybe yes, maybe no. Promotion, how are you going to communicate to the public? How are you going to best promote this new ride or attraction to the target audience, whoever that target audience might be? Then of course the place is, where do you obtain tickets to, so you can go and get on this particular ride, whether it's going to buy tickets at the actual physical park, or you're going to buy tickets online, or both. So here's a pretty cool video of a Disney Imagineer.
I am a mechanical engineer in the Interactive Design and Engineering department here at Walt Disney Imagineering. And that means that I design systems for the interactive attractions of the Disney theme parks worldwide. So that entails speccing equipment, picking out equipment, and putting that equipment together into a system that runs the attraction.
One of the projects that I'm currently working on is Goofy's Paint and Playhouse. We're currently working on the mock-up for Goofy's Paint and Playhouse. Mock-up is important because it allows us to see how guests interact with the attraction and make adjustments based on their feedback.
Imagineering is special because all of the disciplines do work so tightly together. Anything from architects to artists to special effects designers to lighting designers. And we all work together to create the attractions. One challenge that I face in my work is having to switch from the left brain thinking to the right brain thinking. I'll go to a meeting where we're working on a creative concept and I have to give creative input, and then I'll have to switch to doing a technical design document and designing a system in AutoCAD, being purely technical. I have always known that I wanted to be an engineer in the entertainment industry. When I was a child, I went on annual trips to Disneyland with my family, and I was very big into building toys, Legos, and K'NEX, and I was always building stuff. So naturally, the two sort of came together, and I always sort of knew I wanted to build things for theme parks. I think to be an engineer, you do need a solid foundation in math and physics, but I think particularly for engineering in the themed entertainment world, there's a lot of other things that go into it, and a lot of other things that you can learn that can help you along the way. I took a set design class in undergraduate school, and it turned out to be incredibly helpful, and it changed my perspective on entertainment design. And once I got into the industry, it's amazing how many people in this industry actually do have a theater background. My advice for students that want to go into entertainment engineering is to reach out to people who are already in the industry. Look them up. You can find them online. Try to make contact and try to start a network as soon as you can. I found it tends to be an industry where everybody sort of knows everybody. So once you know one person, it opens up a world of connections to many other people who you never know where they can get you. Being a woman engineer historically has been challenging for women in the field that's predominantly led by men, but Disney is a very equitable company to be at. I can go to meetings and be with, 8 guys and be the only woman, and they treat me like everybody else in the room. In 25 years' time, I hope to still be working here at Imagineering, hopefully in a leadership position, leading my own teams of Imagineers and making the next great attractions for the Walt Disney theme parks.
All right, super cool. Gives you an idea of what an engineer does. So she obviously mentioned set design. If you have a chance to take a set design class, I don't know if they offer those kind of classes at Cal State Fullerton, but if you do, you should want to check those out. Okay, Walt Disney. Walt Disney obviously is one of the trendsetters, especially when it comes to talking about theme parks specifically. People we talked about before opened up amusement parks, and so really Walt Disney is the trendsetter, or the person who really starts the idea of a theme park. And he holds the record for most Academy Awards, believe it or not. So the theme park that Disney built was something that sort of anybody in the family could enjoy. So one of the things that Walt Disney noticed when he traveled the world was that there was nothing in the amusement park world that actually, catered to both children or adults. It either catered to children or it catered to adults. It didn't cater to the entire family. And so he created a theme park, or Disneyland, that essentially caters to everybody, the entire family. Now, the other thing that Walt Disney did was that he changed the perception of the amusement park industry / theme park industry, because going back to Coney Island, so Coney Island got run down after the 1940s, and pretty much there was a lot of gangs there, drug dealers and things like that. It was not a family-friendly environment post World War II, and as a matter of fact, it had just had a real negative perception. The industry as a whole had a negative perception, and so really Walt Disney came along and changed the perception of the industry by creating something like a Disneyland. So obviously, his earlier films and TV series were key promotional tools for the rides, because essentially, right, he created these films and television programs, but then he created rides out of these feature films and off of this television series. And so essentially, people who were fans of his earlier works, whether it be a TV show or a film, were obviously very much interested in the rides. So that was the key connection that he made, was between, again, his earlier content that he made in film and TV to his actual theme park rides. He also created a total merchandising experience or environment, right, which totally promotes Disney. So he creates this park really that has never been really duplicated before, where essentially you can buy tons of merchandising based off of, going back to what I was speaking about earlier, based off of his earlier films, based off of his earlier TV series. So it's this incredible total merchandising experience where Disney is able to generate enormous amounts of revenue off of the merchandising that obviously promotes Disney properties. So ABC television deal was the deal that really helped him finance the park. So I don't know if you guys know this or not, but Walt Disney was in financial trouble prior to opening the park, and he essentially didn't have enough money to finish building the park. So the ABC television deal really helped him finance his park, but it also helped promote the park, right? Because the park wasn't done yet, and so this television series was going on promoting the park, which wasn't done yet. So it became a very helpful promotional tool for the park when the park did finally open up. Reruns were really important for Walt Disney. So Disney didn't have the funds to produce a lot of episodes based off of his television show, Walt Disney. And so he essentially would use reruns because back then, a typical television series or season was, well over 30 episodes. And so he would utilize the reruns to essentially remind people about the cool things that were going on or going to be going on at Disneyland. Disneyland is an educational program. It's this idea that, Walt Disney gets up in front of a television audience, in front of the cameras, I should say, and starts, essentially bringing a book with you or with him and reading a story to the entire audience. So he basically sold the idea of Disneyland, right, as sort of this educational, not only as an educational program, but as an educational experience. So if you went to Disneyland, it would be this like incredible learning experience that you would have if you ended up going to Disneyland. So again, this television show became a very important promotional tool for the actual theme park. So as you can see here, right, this is where Disneyland was built. This is Anaheim in 1953. So as you can see right here, there's clearly more trees, fruit trees, than there is people. And so Walt Disney was initially going to build Disneyland over in Burbank, which is where the studios are at. But he was able to find land that was relatively inexpensive in Orange County in the city of Anaheim. And so this largely led to his decision to build the park here. Also, he did a lot of research, and I believe it was Stanford University that gave him critical research information about the future of Anaheim. And so basically, the folks over at Stanford basically told Disney that this Orange County and Anaheim would be a place of huge growth in the future moving forward, and that this would be a great place to build the park. And so this is why he decided to build the park in Anaheim and not over in Burbank, largely because, again, the cost of the land was much more expensive over in Burbank, but also the critical intel that he received from Stanford University kind of cemented his notion or his idea that he was actually going to build the park in Orange County. As you know, the opening day in Disneyland way back in 1955 was an absolute and utter disaster. Food and drinks ran out. The reason being is because Disney wasn't anticipating the number of folks that actually showed up. I believe people were printing copies or made copies of the invitation, so they were able to get into the park. And when in reality they weren't even invited. My understanding is correct. So food and drinks obviously ran out because they weren't expecting the volume of people that actually showed up. There was a plumber strike that went on during that time. So essentially there was no working water fountain. It was apparently also a ridiculously hot day. So it was really hot and there was no water fountains to drink out of. And then there was too many people as well. The Mark Twain riverboat sank. And again, there was incredible heat at the park. So here's a video of the disaster opening day of Disneyland. can see it was a disastrous opening in July of 1955, extraordinarily hot. Anything that could go wrong went wrong, it seemed that way at least. But the fact that people forgot about it, I guess Disney had built up so much goodwill prior to that, that they forgave him for having a disastrous opening of his theme park. And so, anyways, obviously they overcame that horrible day. And so Disneyland caters towards children and adults. It creates all these themed lands. And again, it's a tremendous or enormous merchandising conduit for Disney properties. It cost $17 million, I should say, $17 million to build. It's basically based off of Tivoli Gardens, which is an amusement park or a theme park over in Denmark. And it's sort of based off of Children's Playground over in Oakland. So it's kind of merges those two ideas or those two amusement parks. And this is how he kind of came up with the idea of Disneyland, using those as sort of his blueprints. The Disneyland Hotel opened 3 months later, which obviously enabled Disney to generate more money from the hotel, because remember, Anaheim was, pretty isolated from the rest of Southern California, just in terms of like the big city like Los Angeles. And so it would take a while to get down from Los Angeles to Anaheim. And so this idea of essentially building a hotel right adjacent to the theme park basically enabled people to spend more than just one day at Disneyland. They could spend the entire weekend at Disneyland. So it obviously helped Disneyland generate more revenue. And so, but that being said, Disney again didn't have the money or the funds to actually own the hotel initially. And so other investors had to open that hotel initially before he was able to get ownership of the hotel. He also created a shoppertainment center. So Downtown Disney was created in 2001, sort of modeled after Universal City Walk over in Universal City. This idea of building an entertainment shopping center adjacent to the actual theme park as a mechanism to generate more revenue for the park or for the corporation of Disney. Disney California Adventure was opened in 2001 as well. It's a theme park that was based off of California. So Disney has not failed much in the world of theme parks, but in this particular case, it wasn't well received or as well received as other parks throughout the world. I think because largely people wanted more Disney, and Disney California Adventures was giving them less Disney because the theme park was based off of essentially California history. And so people were looking for more Disney, but they got California history themed stuff instead. So that's why it was mediocre results. Also because I remember when the park opened, there was just a bunch of rainstorms that hit Southern California during that time. And so that sort of hurt the attendance as well. So anyways, Star Wars Galaxy Edge is important because this ride is going to cost Disney $1 billion to build. And so Disney's really spending a lot of money and really banking on the fact that people are going to love this new attraction and is going to bring in even more folks to the theme park, because $1 billion is a lot of money to pay off. I'm going to talk about Disney's other parks. So we have the Magic Kingdom, built in 1971. Disney's first venture after Disneyland was built outside of Orlando. It cost $250 million to build, I think largely because it was built, they had to build it on top of a swamp. So in order to prevent the park from sinking in the swampland, they sort of had to engineer it in a way that wouldn't sink. Also, it's important because Magic Kingdom is the most visited park in the world, and it has been for many years now. It was the first park built on this site, and subsequently Disneyland or Disney has built 3 other parks afterwards, after Magic Kingdom. Located at the Magic Kingdom, we have the Typhoon Lagoon. Typhoon Lagoon is the most visited water park in the United States. It's not the most visited water park in the world. That's Chimlong Water Park in China. So Chimlong Water Park is the most visited water park in the world. The most visited water park in the United States is Typhoon Lagoon. Tokyo Disney. Tokyo Disney was essentially Disney's first venture outside of the United States. And they do not own the park. So essentially what Disney did was that they licensed the themes and they licensed the characters. So it looks like Disneyland. They own obviously the themes, and they own the characters and the merchandise, and I'm sure they make probably revenue share with the owners. So again, they license the themes, they license the characters, they license the rides, but they do not own the park. Disney's Animal Kingdom, this is sort of, or not sort of, it is Disney's sort of environmental wing. This is the park that centers on conservation. It is the world's largest theme park, and it centers on conservation. Hong Kong Disney, this was essentially Disney's first joint venture with a government, a non-US government. So this is a joint venture with the Hong Kong government in 2005. And since then, they are doing a joint venture in China with Shanghai Disney. So this particular park is I believe it's a 57% ownership by the Chinese government, and 43% is going to be owned by Disney. The park right now is destined to cost $5.5 billion, which means this is going to be the most expensive park that Disney's ever built. Again, the most expensive park that Disney has ever built. They've never spent this much money on building a park anywhere. So this is going to be very interesting because the Shanghai Disney park is going to face a lot of competition, not only from other Chinese amusement park chains, but also US chains as well, and theme parks like Universal Studios, for instance. So Universal Studios, we have Carl Laemmle. Carl Laemmle, again, if you remember way back, we talked about movies. So he really was the person who created the studio tour, and he used to charge, I believe, a quarter to so you can watch silent film productions. He would charge people a little bit of money, and they would walk around backstage and they would watch or how films were being produced. But the official modern day tour started in 1964. And it started in 1964 when Universal Studios was taken over by MCA. So MCA, again, started the modern tour when they bought Universal Studios in 1964. This is when they started having staged events and stunts and really showing people film and television sets. In 1993, we have the City Walk that was built. Basically, it's just a strip of entertainment where people can shop and be entertained before and after they leave the theme park. Heck, you don't even have to enter the theme park, and you can just hang out the City Walk. But it was an effort by Universal Studios to generate more revenue utilizing its land. Spielberg and Universal Studios, or Universal Films, has had a very long partnership in history, ranging back from like Jaws. And so Spielberg and Universal essentially have a deal where Spielberg, I should say, gets 2% of the receipts and some concessions, and from the receipts in Florida, from the receipts in Singapore and Japan. I'm not sure how the concession goes, but this means that Steven Spielberg is making millions of dollars every year off of these receipts and some of the concessions, whatever that was negotiated between Universal and Spielberg. So Hagrid's Magical Creature Motor Bike Adventure is essentially the most expensive roller coaster ever built. So again, Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure is the most expensive roller coaster ride ever built in the history of theme parks. So if you're not familiar with Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure, this is what it looks like.
Don't mind the Thestros. Dead clever and useful they are. Off you go. We're reaching the edge of the forbidden forest. We'll have to round up the Snooks before they set fire to anything else. They just don't know what they're doing.
So pretty cool ride. Again, Hagrid's Magical Creature Motorbike Adventure is the most expensive roller coaster ever built. Cost $300 million. So you can see, right? Universal Studios and both Disney are really spending lots and lots of money on theme park rides to try to outdo each other. So again, the most expensive roller coaster ever built, $300 million. Japan. So the Universal Studios in Japan has the most visitors amongst all of the Universal parks. It's also the first venture that Universal made outside of the United States. Beijing. Beijing might be the most expensive theme park ever built. I was reading the Wall Street Journal, and they estimate that Universal Studios is going to spend $6.5 billion in building the Universal Studios Beijing Park. If that is true, then Universal Studios Beijing will be the most expensive theme park ever built in the history of theme parks, because that means they've spent $1 billion more than Disney did to build its theme park in Beijing. So I'm not, again, it's not official, but I do believe that the Wall Street Journal is probably correct when saying that it cost $6.5 billion, but that's why I say it might be the most expensive. Now, Moscow, this is going to be an interesting theme park as well. So Universal Studios is building a theme park in Moscow. And it's because Moscow's winters are so brutal and it's really cold. It does have lousy weather for most of the year. And so what Universal Studios is going to do is they're going to build the first indoor park or theme park in Moscow. So that's going to be an interesting venture. It's supposed to be open in 2022. So again, first indoor theme park that Universal is going to build in Moscow in 2022. So Cedar Fair owns 11 amusement parks and 7 water parks. So Cedar Fair is known for its roller coasters. That's what it's famous for. So we'll talk about 3 of their most prominent parks. So we have Canada's Wonderland, which attracted about 3.9 million visitors. It's a seasonal park. It is the most visited amongst Canadian parks. It also has the most roller coasters outside of the United States. It has 16. So most roller coasters outside of the United States. Please remember that. Most roller coasters outside of the United States. Cedar Point. Cedar Point is considered to be the very best theme park or amusement park or any park in the world. It's considered to be the best park in the world. It is the second oldest park behind Lake Campos. It has 72 rides, as you can see here, and 17 roller coasters. It's the only park in the world that has 6 roller coasters that are over 200 feet tall. It was the first roller coaster with the hyper type of roller coaster. Hyper meaning that it's at least 200 feet high. So hyper, at least 200 feet high. First park with a hyper roller coaster at 200 feet high. It was the first park that had a Giga roller coaster with at least 300 feet high. So Giga, 300 feet. It was also the first roller coaster to have a strata roller coaster, meaning 400 feet. So if you're not familiar with Cedar Point, here's a clip of some of its roller coasters. Again, it's famous for its roller coasters.
I personally thought it was one of the best rides in the park. Taking the bronze is Millennium Force. Due to mechanical issues during my trip, I only got to ride this once, but seeing as how I still remember how amazing that one ride was, I can safely say that this is one incredible coaster. Sure, it wasn't an airtime machine or a speechlessly forceful monster, but there was so much to love about this ride. For one thing, the first drop is unquestionably spectacular. I rode it in the second to back row and found myself being practically launched down that hill, and as I ascended the cable lift, I was able to take in the breathtaking view of Lake Erie. Straight off the first drop, you then go into an overbanked turn, which I actually grayed out on. Afterwards, you then go through a long, sprawling layout through the park, including several amazing floater airtime hills and banked turns. This leads me to my favorite part about this ride, its speed. It feels like you're Sonic the Hedgehog racing through the ride's layout, and since I rode it at dusk, I was surrounded by the colorful lights that were just starting to emerge. It was a dreamlike experience without question. By the time the ride ended, I solidified my disagreement with the nickname Millennium Forceless. Me personally, I would call this Millennium Adventure, as that's what it felt like. Coming in second is Maverick. Intamin does it yet again with this spectacular attraction. By far the best launch coaster I've ever ridden. This ride doesn't mess around, as it keeps throwing element after element at you with no sign of stopping. Even the lift hill itself is a launch. When you're sitting in the back row, you get jolted down that beyond vertical drop, and you're bound to be screaming throughout the entire layout. The ride's twists and turns provide insane laterals, and the inversions are perfectly placed throughout the course. My personal favorite was the twisted horseshoe roll. Additionally, the second launch out of the tunnel has by far the craziest LSM acceleration I've experienced, and you're going to feel flat as a pancake on the back of your seat. You want airtime too? Well, you've got it, as the airtime on this ride is straightforward ejector air that remains unhampered by the excellent soft over-the-shoulder restraints. If you want a balls-to-the-wall ride experience, the back row is an absolute necessity. And now we've come to number one, and of course, it's Steel Vengeance. Although it's been said many times, this ride is a work of genius. Yes, it is my favorite roller coaster of all time so far. And yes, I really mean that. It has everything I love about RMC hybrids and roller coasters in general. The airtime is out of this world. On the bigger hills, you'll get strong floater, but for the...
So again, if you're really into roller coasters, I should say, if you really are into roller coasters, Cedar Point is certainly a park that you should go check out whenever we find a vaccination for this pandemic. It is a super cool park if you're into roller coasters. It's a lot of fun. So again, it's the first park to have a hyper roller coaster, which is a roller coaster at least 200 feet, a giga roller coaster, which is a roller coaster with at least 300 feet high, I should say, and a strata roller coaster with 400 feet. So again, it's the only park to have all those different types of roller coasters. So again, if you're into roller coasters, then Cedar Point is like roller coaster heaven for you. Okay, Knott's Berry Farm. Knott's Berry Farm is the most popular of the parks that's owned by Cedar Fair. So most of the parks that Cedar Fair owns are seasonal parks, whether it's Canada's Wonderland or Cedar Point or even Kings Island. They're all seasonal because the weather is terrible. Knott's, because it's in Buena Park and doesn't really get that cold in California. So that's the advantage that Knott's has over the other parks that are within the Cedar Fair umbrella. Anyways, again, it's the most popular of the amusement parks within the Cedar Fair family. The Corkscrew, I remember that as a kid. It was a super cool ride. So the Corkscrew, which is this right here, it's the first roller coaster, steel roller coaster that had 2 and 360 degrees inversions. So most roller coasters prior to the Corkscrew had one inversion, one loop. And so when the Corkscrew came around, it was the first roller coaster to have 2 inversions. You can run around once and you run around twice. And again, Corkscrew at Knott's Berry Farm, first roller coaster to have 2 360 degrees inversions. So the last of the Cedar Fair parks is Kings Island. So that has an attendance of 3.5 million annually. At least that's what it had last year. It's famous for a few of its roller coasters. We have the Thunderbolt Express. The Thunderbolt Express is the first forward and backward roller coaster. So this is the Thunderbolt Express. As you can see here, it had one loop, went forward, and then you went backwards on that loop. So again, forward and backwards roller coaster, first one. And then we have the Beast. The Beast is the longest roller coaster by footage. So again, longest roller coaster is the Beast. The Banshee is the world's longest inverted roller coaster. And this is the Banshee. The Banshee again is the world's longest inverted roller coaster. Inverted meaning that the rail is above you. You're not on top of the rail. You are below the rail. That's what the inversion means. Inverted, it's meaning that the rail is on top and you're riding the ride below the rail. And so again, the Banshee is the world's longest inverted roller coaster. Okay, Six Flags Six Flags. Six Flags is the world's largest amusement park and water park chain. So it's the world's largest amusement park and water park chain. I believe they have 26 properties. And if you think about the properties here, at least in the United States, most of them are pretty close to a major city in the United States, a major market. So if you think about Valencia, for instance, it's pretty close to, let's say, Los Angeles. It's driving distance. So most of the parks, at least in the United States, are within a driving distance of a major city. And so again, it's the world's largest amusement park and water park chain. I believe they have 26 properties. And what is the first Six Flags park? It was the Six Flags Over Texas in 1961. So again, the first Six Flags park was Six Flags Over Texas. And the name Six Flags comes from the fact that there were six flags that flew over Texas at some point in time. And those six flags were, France, Spain, Mexico, the Texas flag, the U.S. flag, and the Confederate flag. I believe those are the six flags. I'm not 100% sure about all six, but I'm pretty sure about five. Again, Spanish, French, Mexico, Texas, U.S., and Confederate. Six Flags Great America. So Six Flags Great America is the location of where the Goliath is. So Six Flags Great America is the theme park or amusement park that within it has the Goliath. And the Goliath is the fastest wooden roller coaster. So the fastest wooden roller coaster is located at Six Flags Great America. So Six Flags Magic Mountain. So Six Flags Magic Mountain, located in Valencia, is the amusement park that has the world's most roller coasters. So Six Flags Magic Mountain in Valencia has the world's most roller coasters in one park. So world's most roller coasters in one park. It has 19 roller coasters pre-COVID. It had 3.6 million visitors, again, pre-COVID. It was the most visited park amongst all the Six Flags parks. And so basically the Six Flags here in Los Angeles, LA area, benefit from the fact that, we have pretty good weather year round. And so the Six Flags here in Southern California is open year round. It's a year-round amusement park. Six Flags in Magic Mountain in Valencia was also the first park to adopt a one admission price. So again, first to adopt a one admission price. It used to be that if you went to a place like, let's say, Disneyland, they would give you a ticket booklet, right? And within the booklet, I think they had A, B, C, D, and E tickets. And if you used them all up, you had to go back and buy more tickets. And so really, Six Flags Magic Mountain basically said, no, we're just going to have one admission price and you can get on as many rides as you want, which is, pretty cool. And Six Flags Magic Mountain also was sort of famous for a roller coaster named the Revolution, which was the first roller coaster with a 360-degree vertical loop. I think they've built a new one since then. But anyways, Full Throttle. Full Throttle is the tallest vertical loop. It's 160 feet in the United States. So it's the tallest vertical loop in the United States. And it's located in Valencia. And this is a picture of the Full Throttle. Again, this is the biggest vertical loop in the United States. When it was built, it was the biggest vertical loop when it was initially built, but it was passed by a park in China, I want to say. And so at one point in time, it was the world's tallest vertical loop. No longer. Now it is only the biggest or tallest in the United States. It's been surpassed by, I know it was a roller coaster ride out in, I want to say in China, but I'm not 100% sure. I know it's located in Asia. So a Six Flags Great America in New Jersey is the place that where the King de Ka is located at. So King de Ka is located in Six Flags Great Adventure. And this is a picture of King de Ka right here. And so it's a pretty gigantic roller coaster. It's the world's tallest roller coaster. So it's the world's tallest roller coaster. It's 456 feet tall. It's considered to be what they call a strata roller coaster. So a strata, I believe, means it's at least 400 feet tall. So again, this is full King de Ka, and it is the world's tallest roller coaster at 456 feet, which is considered to be a strata roller coaster, which is what they call roller coasters that are at least 400 feet tall. And Magic Mountain is planning to build or expand into the country of China. So Six Flags is making plans. I believe they're working with the Chinese government to build more parks in the country of China. Right now, China is a hot territory. A lot of the US theme park companies, as well as amusement park companies, really want to get into China. Okay, Merlin Entertainments. So Merlin Entertainments is the second largest in terms of number of visitors, behind, of course, the Disney parks. This is again pre-COVID, and so it has a lot of very popular theme park rides. As you can see here, they're in Gardaland, in Alton Park, Thor Park, Hyde Park. They're famous for those parks in Europe, and they're also famous for the Madame Tussauds wax museums that are located all over the world, but including in the United States. So they're really famous for those two things. And they're also famous for one other thing. And that other thing is Legoland. So Merlin Entertainments owns, again, Legoland. And I believe Legoland has 9 different theme parks throughout the world. It's primarily developed or made for kids, even younger kids that would probably go to Disneyland, I would imagine. And I would say that Legoland is probably ideal for kids under the age of probably 10. There's no extreme rides in Legoland, and there has been a jump in attendance at Legoland, at least again pre-COVID. And I believe the first park, Legoland Park, was built in Denmark. I believe it was called Billund, B-L-L-U-N-D, Billund Resort. So Lego Billund Resort in Denmark. That was the first Legoland. Smiler. So Smiler is located in Alton Park, and Smiler is a famous roller coaster, and it's famous for the fact that it has 14 inversions. So 14 inversions essentially means 14 loops, and it's the most loops in the world. So again, Smiler, which is located at Alton Park, holds the record for having 14 inversions. In other words, inversions means loops, and it's the most in the world. Most loops in the world, 14, Smiler. And so Merlin's also famous for having other attractions like museums, castles, sea life parks, and hotels throughout the world. And again, so Merlin Entertainment, a big player in the industries, and it's number 2 when it comes to attendance pre-COVID. United Arab Emirates, or Dubai. So the city of Dubai in the UAE who's really trying to change their economy, and from a more of an oil-based economy to more of a tourism economy. And they're building all sorts of things there to try to bring tourists. And so they're also building some interesting theme parks. And so one of them is the Warner Brothers World Abu Dhabi. And it's what's interesting about this particular park is that it is completely indoors and it's fully air conditioned. As you know, if you've ever been to the Middle East or familiar with the Middle East, gets really hot in the summertime. So AC is critical. And so they built this entire park indoors. And again, it's air conditioned. It's the biggest ever so far. They started planning this in 2007, and it cost about $1 billion. And to my understanding, it features DC Comics. It features a lot of Hanna-Barbera characters, Looney Tunes, those sorts of things. And it has 6 themed lands. The other interesting park that's there is Ferrari World. So Ferrari, this is their first theme park, which is, I think is interesting. They spent 3 years to plan and build this theme park. Now, this particular theme park is notable because it features a roller coaster called Formula Rossi. So again, it's notable because it features a roller coaster called Formula Rossi. Formula Rossi is the fastest roller coaster in the world. So if you're into speed and you have the means to get to the United Arab Emirates, this would be a cool roller coaster to get on. So this is just a quick point of view. I'm not going to sit here too long on this because I'm not sure if you guys have any sort of motion sickness, but here is a point of view of the Formula Rossi ride. Okay, so wow, it goes pretty fast. So it goes from like, I don't know, 0 to 100 in quick time. So this particular ride goes 150 miles an hour, I believe, about 150 miles per hour. So again, the Formula Rossi ride is the fastest roller coaster in the world. So one last thing about the United Arab Emirates, they were planning to build something called Dubai Land in that particular city. And Dubai Land was supposed to be essentially this theme park that was going to be twice the size of the Magic Kingdom and the Epcot Center. If you combine all those theme parks that are located in Orlando, right, those 4 theme parks, well, Dubai Land was going to be twice the size of that. It was going to be one of the most ambitious projects ever in the world of theme parks, amusement parks. It was going to cost, expected, about $64 billion to make this ginormous park. And funds are still being raised for this particular park, but in reality, this park is not going to get built. It's most likely it's going to be a huge failure, partly because this was being planned and they were raising money when the global economy crashed. Right? If you guys remember 2008, you guys were probably little kids, but the global economy crashed, and so unfortunately, all the projects that they were working on sort of stopped, and the money sort of stopped, and so Dubai Land probably is never going to happen. But I think I should talk about it because it was, at one point in time, people were really excited about what was going to happen at Dubai Land, just in terms of what it was going to look like, or what they were thinking was going to look like. And so unfortunately, looks like it's never going to come to fruition. But again, I think it's something interesting. All right, so what is the number 1 park in terms of attendance? Disney World or the Magic Kingdom is number 1. in 2019, it attracted 20.9 million visitors. So again, Disney World or the Magic Kingdom, 20.9 million visitors. It was number one. As a matter of fact, Disney claims the top 4 positions in terms of attendance. Disneyland is number 2 at 18.6. Tokyo Disneyland is second at third with 17.9. There's Tokyo Disney Sea, which is 4th. So it's not until you get to the 5th place position where you have another park that's not a Disney park, which is the Universal Studios Japan. So what's the importance of forecasting? This is where it's very critical to have, highly creative people, and Disney uses these very creative people in a sense that you have the Disney Imagineers. Universal has people called the Universal Creatives. And so these folks are really important just in terms of trying to come up with new and creative attractions that are going to be appealing to people moving forward. And so the last thing you want is to have your park to feel sort of stale and no longer interesting to your visitors. So this is why, again, it's very important to have very creative people like the Disney Imagineers or the Universal Creatives to try to keep coming up with new and clever ideas to keep people coming back for many years. So here's the attendance in terms of the overall parks. As you can see, Walt Disney far ahead of the other parks throughout the world. The other thing that you should notice that's kind of interesting, at least I think it's relatively interesting, is the rise of the Chinese parks. They occupy now number 3, number 5, and number 6. So again, it clearly tells you that as Disney moves into China and they've built this park in Shanghai, they're going to face a lot of competition again from the Chinese parks, but also the American parks that are going into China as well. I mean, if the Wall Street Journal is correct with their figures, and Universal Studios just built a park that's the most expensive park ever built in the history of theme parks. And so Disney's going to face immense competition from all these various competitors moving forward. So I know the Disney government's gotten some help, or I shouldn't say, I know Disney is working with the government, and the Chinese government essentially has put like a sort of a trademark free zone where essentially Disney products are protected from trademark infringement within a certain mile radius around the park. But I know that China has not been very good about enforcing its trademark laws and copyright laws. So this is something that certainly Disney and Universal need to be paying attention to moving forward as they move into China. So here's a video of Fantawild, which I think is kind of interesting because Fantawild, as you can see here from the slide, had a big, almost 20% jump in attendance. So this is a little bit about Fantawild in China.
Xiamen Fantawild Oriental Heritage opened for business on April 16, 2017. Xiamen Fantawild Oriental Heritage contains 9 themed areas, 12 main attractions, and 1 cultural heritage town. Here, visitors can try out our fabulous attractions and rides, have a bit of traditional Chinese food, and view gorgeous Chinese works of art. Visitors will enjoy various aspects of China's 5,000 years of history.
我设计了东方神话主题乐园，这是一个很有魅力的乐园。这项工作也极富挑战性，非常刺激。中国有很多神奇的古老传说，在设计东方神话的时候，我们提出了一个大胆的创意，我们要用最先进的科技来完成这个主题乐园。为此，我们用了10多年的时间，在全球范围跟踪最新的高科技，并且成立了专门的科研机构。我们要用最好的技术来完成东方神话。我们大量运用了自动控制技术、机电一体化技术、现代特种影像技术、高科技的动感车、大型的升降平台以及 AR 技术。 那些东方的大律师和女神，因此可以做到令人吃惊的举动，带给现场观众无比震撼的体验效果。
方特东方神话的项目非常的丰富，运用了许多创新的项目形式，有很多项目形式都是世界首创。
Here you can enjoy Bridge to Love inside a large indoor domed theater. The Dragon's Palace, an indoor ride combined with 3D film projection. And Eternal Love at our holographic augmented reality theater. In The Legend of Nuwa, audiences will ride on a track as Nuwa mends the sky.
So clearly, if you think about it, the Chinese parks, at least seem to me, they're focusing a lot on Chinese culture. So it's going to be interesting to see again how Disney and Universal and these other parks that are coming from the West and going into China, just curious to see how Western pop culture is going to work in China when these parks are focusing on their own specific culture to try to bring in Chinese visitors. So it's going to be, again, very interesting to see what happens moving forward. Okay, so this is the revenue for the theme park industry in 2019. So as you can see, 2019 was a very good year for the theme park industry. Disney clearly is number one, then followed by Universal Studios and Cedar Fair, which owns parks like Knott's Berry Farm. You see SeaWorld and Six Flags rounding out the top 5. And so last year, at least in the United States, in 2019 at least, I should say, the revenue was $20.6 billion. And what is the number 1 and number 2 revenue stream? It is ticket prices, or ticket sales, I should say. So ticket sales was the number 1 revenue stream. Number 2 revenue stream is concessions. So again, ticket sales is number 1, and concessions is number 2. The International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions, IAPA, is the trade organization that oversees the industry. The market structure for the industry, both on the production side as well as distribution side, are both oligopolies. Well, I should say an oligopsony when it comes to production and an oligopoly when it comes to distribution. Because if you look at the top 6 companies, or top 5 or 4, I should say in this case, it's over 70% of the market share. So that's pretty immense. So again, the production part of theme park industry is an oligopsony, and the distribution part is an oligopoly. And so what are some challenges within the industry? Well, there's several challenges. One of them obviously being weather. So many of the parks are, for instance, seasonal. And so, for instance, you have to worry about storms like hurricanes, or you have to worry about tornadoes in some cases. You have to worry about extreme heat. You have to worry about some natural disasters that could occur during the summer, really all year round, really, but especially in the summer. Also, some parks are also closed during the winter because it's too cold. So again, weather is a big challenge for many parks throughout the United States. Economics, so that, in other words, consumer spending, right? When consumer spending goes down, oftentimes one of the first things that goes is entertainment, because you don't really need entertainment. It's great to have it, but you don't really need it. So things like unemployment, the price of airline tickets, those sorts of things can really affect the revenue of a theme park. Terrorism, there's always a threat of terrorism because theme parks is where a lot of people congregate, and so they're considered to be soft targets. And location is another challenge in some cases, right? What I mean by that is you have to place parks that are accessible to a large number of people, and then you also have to identify areas of future growth. So in other words, build parks where you think the population is moving to. That's a challenge trying to figure out. Number 5, taste. So it's really hard to figure out what do 10-year-olds or 10 and 19-year-olds like, because really that's the target market for the theme park industry. So what does the target audience enjoy? What will they enjoy moving forward? And last but not least, again, right, COVID is a big challenge that we have to consider, is this idea that will a large number of people come back to the parks once we've been vaccinated, or there's herd immunity, or whatever the case is going to be. So, for example, one of the big things that you see here in 2020 is a big drop in the revenue. It's still an oligopoly, but you can clearly see here, because of the parks being closed, at least in California, and restricted limitations when it comes to attendance, is that it really hurt the bottom line of most of these large amusement park chains or theme park chains. And so anyways, that concludes my lecture on